Welcome to episode 57 of the Search with Canada podcast. My name is Mark Williams-Cook, and today we are going to be joined by technical and e-commerce specialist Kristina Azarenko to talk about one of the areas that causes a lot of e-commerce sites the greatest pain, which is categories, faceted navigation, and pagination. If that doesn't mean a lot to you, stick around because we'll start from kind of the ground up, and if it's something you deal with on a daily basis, I think it's going to be good for you to listen as well. Kristina, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Really appreciate it. Why don't you just take a moment to introduce yourself, your background, and tell people a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm also excited to join this podcast. I love podcasts and love what Mark is sharing. So I'm excited to be there. I'm an e-commerce and technical SEO consultant based in Toronto, Canada. And I help businesses get traffic and get sales they deserve from Google traffic. I've been in digital marketing and SEO for about 10 years. And I've worked with many companies when I was working in-house and agencies. But my true passion lies in helping online stores. And this is very timely in all this current situation.
Yeah, I thought this was a particularly good subject. So we've had a few episodes recently about obviously coronavirus, COVID-19 stuff, and talking about digitally what's happening, how businesses are changing. And one thing that's come out through that is lots of businesses are either upping their e-commerce game, investing more in their SEO for e-com, and there's a whole load of SMBs, small, medium businesses, enterprises that didn't have an e-commerce offering before and now are scrambling to get one. So I thought this would be a really good chance to speak to someone like Kristina, this is her bread and butter, this technical SEO for e-com sites. And I wanted to pick up on her suggestion actually to talk about this kind of categorization, faceted navigation, which is kind of a scary technical end of e-com in a way. It requires a bit of planning. It's one of my favorite areas for SEO because normally there's a lot of improvements that can be made on most sites that you kind of get involved with. So Kristina, I guess if we address those businesses that are starting out now with an e-commerce site, so they've decided they've got their products and they didn't necessarily sell online before, or maybe like some of the clients we've had, they're looking to move onto a platform because they're currently selling on, say, like an eBay shop. In terms of categorization, so in terms of we've got this product range, how should they decide what goes where? What's the process? What are the tools? How do they validate it? What kind of process should they start thinking about in terms of how they categorize their products on their e-com site?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, I also wanted to mention that, as you said, e-commerce is growing right now because people who didn't sell online, they were just operating offline, now have to switch. And in one of the talks, I had this statistics where people were fascinated by it. It said that by 2040, about 95% of all the sales will be done online. It is statistics from NASDAQ. And I feel that this 2040 year is already coming. So because everybody has to migrate their efforts online. And if you're just starting, like, first of all, you should decide which platform to choose. And this is a completely huge topic, but I'd say that start with something small. If you have never had a shop, start with maybe Shopify or WooCommerce. And when it comes to understanding which categories you should create, first of all, you already should have some understanding of your customers, because if you were operating offline, you can analyze the demand and you can understand what people will search for potentially. But one good thing, and it's actually quite a fast thing to do, is to look at your competitors. it never hurts. It never hurts to look at your competitors' websites, or for some websites who are partially your competitors, and see what they have as categories, especially those that are quite doing really well online. So this never hurts, and so you can have a number of your products and then decide which categories to create based on these products. What I would also say is, usually people think only about the types of products. If we, for an example, baby gifts, like random example, baby gifts. You can think about, okay, baby gifts for girls, baby gifts for boys, etc. This is pretty straightforward. But I would also suggest thinking about the use cases of your products. So in this example, this would be baby shower gifts or gifts for first birthday. These might not be very relevant examples right now because, but still, this is the idea how you look at your products, not only in terms of their type, but also which use cases can be seen for those products.
So this might be, we find as we're using tools to mine data, say like Google Suggest, then we're seeing what people are searching, that they might just be searching by the actual function of the product because they
Yeah,
don't necessarily know a brand, or they don't know the name of the thing they need. They just have a problem they need solving. So you're saying we maybe need to create categories to cater for them as well, because I guess if we don't, it comes down to, if you don't have the page, the content on the page, you aren't going to rank for that. So we need to actually think about creating those categories around that as well, is what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Because if you have, for example, one category for all the products, and you think, yeah, these products can be used like this, these products can be used like this, but people don't know it, and when they are looking for these use cases or these types of products, there are millions of other websites who have those pages. So your website, your store won't be as relevant. And here's one more example, and I just remembered about this. This is a really great way to come up with category suggestions as well. For example, if you go to Google and look for something which is quite general, for example, swing chair, and if you go to images, at the top you will see different types of swing chairs that can exist. So if you're selling swing chairs, again, not really relevant example right now, but I think
No, I think a lot of people will be in
yeah.
their garden for summer. So I've actually just done this while you've been talking. So
Oh,
I've Googled
so
swing chair, I've gone to images, and we've got indoor, outdoor,
yeah,
garden, living
that,
room, wooden, hanging. So it's a really good example. So we're saying, there are going to be people searching for indoor swing chairs, outdoor swing chairs,
yeah.
garden swing chairs, living.
I have
So we
I
need to
have a
think
swing
about
chair.
that use.
Yeah, I have a swing chair,
Is
and
it an indoor, an outdoor one, or a garden one?
well, it's so I live in a condo, so it's actually outdoor. So in summer it's on the balcony, but during the winter it's an indoor, so it's convertible for me. But yeah, I
That's a
think
new search term there, convertible swing chair.
I don't
So
think that.
you've opened yourself up a can of worms here, Kristina, because you've dived in and you've mentioned about Shopify and WooCommerce already. And one kind of question I wanted to ask you was, so there's a problem on some content management systems where if we add the same product to
Hmm.
multiple categories, so this is obviously quite a common thing that you might have one product. So let me see if I can think of an example. So say we take our swing chair example, and we have outdoor swing chairs as a category, and we also have garden swing chairs as a category. Now, you would expect an outdoor swing chair maybe to be in both of those categories. Now, with some e-commerce platforms, the way they're structuring URLs is they'll have, the site.com / the category name, so something like outdoor swing chairs, and then the product name. And then obviously we get a duplicate URL sometimes created, which would be, / then it would be garden swing chairs, and then the product name. So essentially, if we're adding the same product into two categories, we might get duplicate URLs. Now, I know, and we won't get into the faceted navigation stuff now, but I know, Shopify, I believe, handles this by making a product URL without any kind. I think they call them collections, and uses canonical tags, so it does create all of the different URLs. WooCommerce, I believe, for stuff like variations, it just creates new URLs for every variation you have, and it leaves you to tidy that up. So my general question here is, you've mentioned Shopify, WooCommerce. Is there any particular pros and cons that you could recommend for small businesses, why they would choose one or the other? Or if you say, if you go for WooCommerce, here's a couple of things that you should look out for.
Yeah, sure. So this is actually one of the most common issues when it comes to duplicate content for online stores. And it's really weird that all the popular e-commerce systems don't really handle this out of the box really well. So I'd say that if you're just starting, if you don't want to put lots of efforts in putting all the canonicals in place, I'd say just go with a flat structure: website slash and then the product name, uh, versus having category catalog, category name in the URL. And in as you said, right, in Shopify you can disable it, but also what you should do, no matter which system you use, is to make sure that all your internal links are the same, um, as you decided. So for example, if you have a product URL without the category, all the internal links should also have this product URL without the category. Because I've had so many situations when, for example, there's a Shopify store and they are handling their product URLs really well. They have just flat structure, but the collections pages have links to these product URLs with collection, product, etc. So this is the wrong link, and you should make sure that this link is the flat structure what your product has. You can change it. I believe you can change it in the liquid files. It's not really hard, but this is a very important thing to realize, that your internal structure should have all the URLs which are canonical versions, preferred versions. And
So that's something that's much easier to do at the planning and build stage, isn't it? Because if you go live with the default kind of collection URLs, and they get linked to internally, and some maybe end up indexed, because as we know, Google says canonical is a hint, not a directive, so they could get indexed. There's like a big, perhaps, tidying up job you've got to do there afterwards, right?
yeah, I say that I'm a big fan, actually. If you can do something right from the beginning, do this right from the beginning, because otherwise this is this is going to be expensive to redo these things, because you will need to estimate them, you will need to have more development time, and this is going to be like more costly. And I'm for more cost efficient strategies. And one thing also, just to getting back to the platforms and this setting, for example, in Magento, as far as I remember, in Magento 2 and I think in Magento 1 as well, there is an option to also make your product URLs flat, which means that you won't have any category there, because otherwise you'll have, as we were talking, duplicate URLs for products, the same product with different URLs. But there are also some extensions. Magento has lots of extensions, and it actually used to work for a company who developed extensions. So that's why I like know a lot of this functionality that can be added. So there was an extension which is called Unique Product URL, and it automatically, you can configure it to automatically choose only one category the product belongs to. So as a canonical. So for example, if we have swing chair in the garden category, then swing chair in indoor, and swing chair, I don't know, in something else like furniture, you can choose the longest or the shortest path as a canonical, which means that in this case it would be garden or indoor. Well,
So I think that's really interesting that whichever platform you choose,
yeah,
um, is likely that you're going to need to tweak things to make it efficient in the long term and to give you the best chance of ranking well. And as you say, that's kind of surprising because all of these systems sell themselves as, the e-commerce platform that SEO is built in, you don't need to worry about it. But actually it turns out that all of them have their quirks, and they're not necessarily as good as they can be out of the box.
yeah,
So faceted navigation is something I want to talk to you about already. So I mean, we've already talked for like 15 minutes about just categories, which is cool. But so faceted navigation is probably the more complex subject. Do you want to give just an intro, maybe for people who haven't come across that term before, as to what is faceted navigation and why is it an important consideration?
yeah, sure. So when you come to an online store, the best example that I can think about is, of course, clothes. So when you come to an online store and you're looking for something, this is a huge category, for example, women's clothes. But you want to drill down to actually find what you need without, spending hours looking through all the different pages. So you choose the color. For example, I want, let's go with sneakers. I want black sneakers. I choose black color. Then I know my own size, so I choose 9 size, right? So this helps me to drill down into the specific set of products I'm interested in. And this happens with the help of different sorting and filters option. What you usually see in the sidebar or sometimes above the products, when you can choose again size, color, brand, all this different stuff, which helps you save time and find the products much faster. From the user's perspective, this is an ideal thing when you want to find something particular. But when it comes to SEO, the problem is all these variations, in most of the cases, create different URLs. So when I add color, there is a different URL, there's some parameter added to the URL. When I add size, there's a new parameter added to the URL. And if all those URLs are indexed, it happens a lot. So when they are all indexed, it means that your website has so many pages which are not really of high value and list basically the same products all over again.
And this is going to be, even if you've got 3 or 4 things you can filter by, and each of those have 3 or 4 filters, that's a huge number of pages. We're talking immediately in the thousands of variations of pages that are really similar. So what's the general, so we know that, we've got canonical as one thing in our toolbox that we can use to combat when we've got 2 pages that are really similar and maybe with the same intent. What's your general approach to faceted navigation? What are the kind of best practice rules you go by when you're looking at e-commerce sites?
Yeah, so there are different ways to handle it, and I also wanted to give one more idea why this is bad. The thing is that Google evaluates your website in general, so on the basis of all the pages that you have. So if say 95 pages of your website are duplicates or thin content, this happened in my life, and when I joined one of the clients, the 95% of index pages were all duplicates. This means that your website doesn't look really good to Google. So yeah, so it means that you need to clean those up. And when it comes to best ways to handle it, my best go-to thing is canonicalization. Uh, just because it consolidates all the signals for the pages. So, for example, if one page gets a link, an external link from some website, your website will benefit from it. And if this page, which got the link, has a canonical pointing to another page, your website still benefits. But if you use no index or something like that, these signals won't consolidate. But the problem with canonicals is that if your website has millions and millions of pages, it can be really costly in terms of crawl budget. Crawl budget is the rate with which Google can crawl your website. And if it comes to your website and spends, I would say, wastes all of the time on crawling each page with a canonical, which is actually not really valuable page, but it still spends this time, it won't get to the really important pages, like product pages, especially if your stock is very dynamic and you have new products coming in stock. Yeah, this might just hurt your website. So in this case, I'd say, like, if you have millions of pages, then you can use URL parameters tool in Google Search Console. But very, but be very careful, because this tool is, well, you can make bad things with this. I mean, you should understand what you are doing, and you should read everything carefully when you're choosing options. Um, so there is an option to choose a URL parameter and say that it doesn't really change or it sorts the products, and then choose that Google should not crawl these pages. This is one of the
So
things.
this is the tool equivalent of a chainsaw in that it's very powerful, but you need to make sure you don't end up chopping off things that aren't meant to be
Yeah,
chopped off.
exactly. And also Google Help will have this red notice. Make sure that you understand what you are doing before actually using this tool. And this is really right, because I think that they've seen so many examples when people just were using it without real understanding. So that's good that they
Mm.
really reinforce it. One more thing that you can do is to use no index. It doesn't necessarily save the crawl budget, because the page still needs to be crawled. But if you have no index, it means that at some point the crawl rate will be really, really low. So Google will prioritize the more important pages and won't spend lots of its crawl budget for crawling these canonicalized pages. The downside is that the signals from external links, from internal links, they are not consolidated, and you just losing those if you have them coming to no-index pages.
So would you say, if it's possible, a good approach might be to access filters on a page that you don't want indexed, maybe through kind of JavaScript, a way that Google's really going to struggle to get to those URLs, or maybe use URL fragments, so anything after the hash that Google's just going to ignore anyway? Would
Um,
that be a valid approach?
yeah, I would say in an ideal world, um, it's better to use like Ajax for these filters, so that you don't even create any new URL. People can benefit from these sortings, and they can drill down to the products they need, but no new URLs are created. At the same time, some filters, some filters can become indexable facets, which means that they will be indexed by Google and they will have value. So should I come into specifics right now, or are we going to talk about this later?
Well, I guess the question I have, that I think would be really good to go over, would be over when we draw the line between when something should and shouldn't be indexed. So if we have like a website, say, that just sells running shoes, right?
Yep.
And we do our keyword research and we say, okay, there's lots of people searching for like red running shoes. We'll just say there is. I don't know how many there are, but we say that's like a genuine search term that people are looking for. So we decide, okay, that's maybe going to be like an indexable subcategory is going to be red running shoes, right? And then, of course, we've got our normal filters, which might be things like to sort by or filter by price. But then there's this kind of, for me, this gray area in the middle, which might be something like size, for instance. So size, to me, normally falls into like a non-indexable filter category. But then there's the argument of, well, are there people searching for, say, like size 9 running shoes? And if so, should we not create a page for them? And so how do you decide where to draw that line of when something just becomes too specific that it's not worth creating a paid indexable URL for, and it should just be a kind of a filter that's not indexed?
Yeah. So First of all, I would say that I would come from the place of deciding. So when you have all the filters not indexable, and then you decide which should be indexable, versus when you have all the indexable and decide which not should be indexable. Hope
Hmm.
this makes sense. So um, what I did, I have a talk about this, and it's really interesting question, because what you can do is to analyze, first of all, like do your keyword research, because it really helps a lot. And as you said, for some websites, size might make sense, sometimes even price, but for some websites this would be just garbage pages. So it's really important to see what works in your specific situation. Then what I'd say, if you already have these pages, you can look into Google Analytics. You can see which filters people are using, how they're using them. So it can give you a good understanding of what your customers are interested in. Then also use internal search. You should definitely have it configured in Google Analytics. It just takes 5 seconds. And use search terms. If people are looking for black sneakers size 10, and many people are looking for this, create a separate page for this and make sure that this page is indexable so that people can find it through Google. And what I had as an approach for one of the clients is that I did all the research, and I recommended creating some categories, but they had a huge number of filters. So creating one category by one was just like, I don't know, it took 2 years. So I came up with this framework. When I chose particular filters based on keyword research, I chose particular filters. These were, as far as I remember, type, size, and color, or something like that. And those filters would become indexable facets. This was for t-shirts. If they have enough products in their, when you filter, if they have enough products, then this is a separate indexable URL. So to give you an example, there is an overall category t-shirts. Then there is indexable filter, which is color. So we'll have yellow t-shirts, for example. If this category, yellow t-shirts, have 9 products or more, then this is a standalone facet page which we index and which people can find through Google. If this page has 2 products, then we have a canonical pointing to a parent page, which is going to be t-shirts in this case. I think
So this is like a framework then that will grow with the site, maybe. So as you add more products as well, these
yeah,
pages can then open up and
yeah,
become
exactly.
indexable.
Exactly. It helps to solve this issue with too many faceted pages which are not really valuable, or having pages which are unique, which have really value for users, have them indexable, but to have it all at a scale.
So I think it'd be really nice to finish up on a question actually around numbers of products, and that's to do with pagination. So we've probably all seen pagination before, which is when you load maybe a category on an e-commerce site and it's showing you, say, products 1 to 50, and then you scroll to the bottom and then it's like you're on page 1 of 142 or something.
Yeah.
So I'd be really interested to your thoughts on what you should do if you've got a top level category that someone can browse to and it's got in the thousands of products in, and what is the best approach to that, because obviously we've got options like making a view all page, for just for bots or for users and bots. We've got seen people giving advice about no indexing so far down into paginations. We've got Google bots supporting lazy load now. What's your preferred approach when you've got that situation? We've got a category with lots and lots of products in.
Yeah, I think that this might be a popular opinion. So do you remember that there used to be rel previous next? which was discontinued.
Yes, and I was telling people to use it right up until the point where Google said they hadn't even been using it themselves for
Yes,
quite a few months.
yes, exactly. Well, it's still valuable because some other search engines use it, but in terms like if we talk about Google, so I at first I was freaking out, and then I was like, it's interesting because nobody actually, I mean, in terms of users and in terms of SEOs, nobody actually noticed that something was wrong while Google wasn't using it, right? So we were
Yeah,
implementing, we were recommending to use it, and like nothing was wrong, everything was fine. And then we realized, like not realized, then Google told us occasionally, it wasn't even an announcement, that it's not using it anymore, and everything was fine. So my opinion is that I'd say keep the pagination indexed. So don't no index it, because eventually, um, a better explanation. So uh, each page of the pagination has links to the products. And if you have many of these products, it's really valuable that Google should discover those products from internal links. And internal links also have carry signals from one page to another. So it's really valuable to have Google go through these links and to actually like see these links. When you no index pages, even if you have no index follow, as we know at some point, Google treats no index follow pages as no index no follow pages. So it means you just cut off this part of your website. That's why I'd say that keep keep the paginated pages indexed. Don't canonicalize them to the main category page. Don't no index them. When it comes to view all, this might also be a good option, but at the same time, um, as I mentioned before, you should have internal links the same as your canonical tags. So if inside of your website you link to category without view all, and then you canonicalize view all category, it gives conflicting signals to Google. You're basically saying my view all page should be canonical, but at the same time my canonical page should be without view all. So this is also something not really good. So I'd say look at your Google Search Console, see how Google perceives these pages, and in most situations you won't even see issues with that. Like we didn't see those issues before we actually knew that previous next is discontinued.
it's a particularly interesting case I find because I think last time, I don't know if they've been updated, I read the Google Docs on pagination and view all. Their recommendation was their research had showed that users tend to prefer landing on a view all page rather than say, like a view 10 products. And I think that's anecdotally been backed up when I've watched user testing of people on e-commerce sites. One of the first things a lot of them do is change the how many they view on a page to like the maximum amount, because it's an easier kind of UX experience scrolling and sliding rather than kind of clicking. So they've recommended using the canonical tag back to the view all page because they said users prefer that experience, and the overall latency is lower than if they clicked through and reloaded paginated sets. However, that to me obviously has a logical cutoff, because if you have a paginated page set of 50 or 100 pages, no user, well, it's unlikely a user is going to sit and click through every single one of them. So it doesn't make sense, like you're saying, to try and load thousands of products onto a single page, because that's going to become a very kind of heavy page then.
Yeah,
um, I
exactly.
guess we're just kind of circling around the classic SEO answer of it depends.
Yeah.
um, but I think the important takeaway there is there's nothing inherently wrong with pagination if you've got it, and it's working for you, and it's working for your users. You don't need to kind of worry about trying to move everything onto a view all. Have you got any preferred e-commerce platform that you'd kind of recommend to start up businesses? We talked about WooCommerce, Shopify, and Magento. Is there anyone you think handles all these things particularly well? Is there anyone you'd normally go to? I know we kind of covered that earlier with their quirks. I'm just trying to tease out from everyone. I did from Luke as well. If you have got a preferred kind of platform you do try and get people on.
I'd say, well, the best answer here is it depends as well,
It
but
depends.
it depends on how tech savvy you are and how much budget you have. So I'll give a few ideas that might help people choose
Brilliant.
the platform in their particular situation. So when it comes to Shopify, this is best for people who are not really tech savvy, and that's totally fine, because they make things pretty easy, less flexible, much less flexible, but really easy for people to start. And as far as I know, they've now extended their free trial, which is amazing because they trying to help those people who need to start their online stores quickly.
Is it like 3 months now? Is that
Yes,
right?
yes, it's I believe it's 90 days. Yes, 3 months.
Yeah.
So there you can just get up and running pretty fast. They have many templates, so it's pretty easy if you want to start quickly to start with them. Then, when it comes to WooCommerce, this is a good platform, but you should also have some technical knowledge because it's WordPress. So if you're good with WordPress, that's great for you. Um, but you still should have some technical knowledge how to do stuff there because it's pretty flexible. It also has plugins, so you can get everything best from all the platforms. It's flexible, but at the same time, it's not that expensive. But if you want to have a really like big store and you have developers, if you want maximum customization and numerous different features, go with Magento because it's again it's quite expensive, but it has many different features, many different extensions, and you can customize your shop so much, and also you can customize and improve your efficiency as an admin of the store because there's so many things that can help you do this. But you will definitely need a developer. So if you don't have a developer, if you don't have money at this point for a developer, don't start with Magento. Make sure don't start with
Does
Magento.
the number of products make much difference to you? I mean, the
Um,
impression just from, again, anecdotally I've seen is Magento tends to be for sites with more products.
yeah,
Have you seen it running on kind of small sites, as in, you've got a couple of hundred products?
yeah, I saw stores like that, but I'd say that if you have just a few hundred, like a couple of hundred products, or if you have like 10 products, Magento is not your option as well. It just won't be efficient for you. It will be costly. So start with this in this case with Shopify or WooCommerce.
Brilliant. Kristina, thank you so much for giving up some of your time to speak to us about e-commerce, SEO, categories, navigation, faceted navigation, canonicalization, all the big words that make us sound super clever. It's been really interesting talking to you. We can find out more about Kristina. It's at marketingsyrup.com, I believe.
Yes, that's right, marketingserve.com.
And I know because, again, I neglected to mention at the beginning of the show. So a bit like Luke Carthy, Kristina just kind of edged her way onto my radar because she posts on LinkedIn a lot. And I was saying to her just before we started recording, actually, kind of I organically started to kind of notice her posts because I saw she was putting out a lot of good information. And I believe you run a SEO challenge course. Is that right? Do you want to tell everyone about that just before we
Uh,
finish?
yeah, that's right. So I'm a teacher by education and I'm an SEO by profession. So I think that this teacher part is coming out of me. That's why I decided to create an SEO challenge course. I created it last year. This is for people who want to learn SEO from the beginning to like intermediate level. We talk a lot about a lot of stuff there. It's very practical, and I just have it now on demand for all the people who are bored who are bored now
Yeah, right.
and can learn something new. So it's also my
And
best.
they can find that at Marketing Syrup as well,
Yeah,
marketingsyrup.com.
at marketing.com, and you will see SEO challenge in the navigation.
Cool, brilliant. So I hope people will check that out as well. Thank you again, Kristina, for joining us. Our next episode is going to be on Monday, the 27th of April. Of course, as usual, you can get the show notes, links to everything we've talked about, as well as a full transcription at search.withcandor.co.uk. And I hope you'll tune in next week.